All righty. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show. I'm joined by Scott and Colin, and they are working on a project. I was introduced to them by this gentleman named Corey. How do you say Corey's last name?
Corey Andrelot.
Andrelot. Corey.
Corey.
Corey's a rabble rouser. He's a natural law guy, a student of the great Mark Passio, and he's been wanting to do stuff together. It's been so crazy busy. But he was in town with this crew. He was here, right?
Yeah, he was. We were just with Mike Adams. They were with Mike Adams yesterday for it. Yeah,
the great Corey. Mike Adams. Yep. So he introduced me to his friends here, and they're working on a project. Tell me the website again.
Healthrevealed.org.
Healthrevealed.org. So let's go ahead and get down to it. But first, if you'll introduce yourself, what your background is, how you got in this whole freedom conspiracy world, and I'd like to hear from you as well, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, my name's Scott Gordon, and I have worked a little bit with Mark Passio and his group, and I think I kind of stumbled onto John's work through Derek Bros. And so I've been, especially since the lockdown, where I joined the Freedom Cell in my local community in Pueblo, Colorado. I've been following on off and on, and really interested in intentional communities. I'm a carpenter architect from long ago, but now I'm more of a part-time school teacher, and I'm really specializing in the inner work for the freedom community, helping teach and train people to do it with each other or on their own if they're capable of doing that, and just promoting, exactly what Mark Passio has talked about in the past a lot. He teaches the outer work, and he talks about the need for inner work, but people go, what do I do? And so that my purpose is to kind of fill in that gap. And I met Colin a few years ago, and just it was just a natural coalition, you might say.
I was doing Zoom calls, and actually Scott, Stephanie, and Leslie all have been a part of my Zoom calls.
Cool.
And so and then I met Corey later, so much later.
Right.
So
well, good stuff. And that's great to know that you're doing the inner work piece. That's one thing that I've come to find out, whether it's running a business, a household, a relationship, a marriage, the relationship with your kids, or activism, especially intentional community. The inner work is of the utmost importance, but everybody focuses on the outside thing. Yeah. Everybody likes to blame others too, because the inner work is the hardest part.
That's right.
Sometimes you got to face some demons,
that's right.
And it's uncomfortable.
Exactly. And then as communities, we don't have a shared language. We don't have a shared paradigm. In my case, I'm basically starting with Jungian psychology, bringing in internal family systems and some other things like that.
Yeah.
And but I'm also coming from the same place, the red pill kind of place. I mean, my story was that I was a professional musician, audio engineer.
You got musician vibes.
Yeah, running a recording studio and all of that. And but I had I'm 55 now, but when I was 35, I had my little dark night of the soul, and where everything crashed at once. And so that basically brought up all the rage, all the grief, all the leftover stuff from my difficult childhood and all of that. And I'm like, now I'm going to pull that Jungian psychology book off the shelf that my friend had given me.
Okay.
Robert Johnson's Owning Your Own Shadow, which is a great book to start with.
Okay.
And, go through that, start working on it, go in the direction of Jungian psychology, which is basically, everyone talks about shadow work now. Everybody kind of intuitively realizes we need this. That's where it comes from. It comes from Carl Jung's work. And so I went in that direction, but it's interesting. At the same time that I was sort of doing this whole thing, I'm getting red pilled to 9/11 and finding that whole movement and all of that. And so that's even adding to my load of rage or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I can tell you a much longer story, but kind of where it all kind of came down to for me after 20 years of working on myself and with my partner Melissa Mari, who a lot of this work, she's not with us anymore, but a great deal of our work together over the last 15 years is due to her, because we were using our relationship as an alchemical vessel, basically, and working out.
You kind of have to for a relationship to work.
And if yes, and so that's the most advanced sort of container you can have. You can do a certain amount of work on your own, and you have to. And if you are alone, this is the time to start doing it, and you have to get into your stuff. But once you get into a relationship, if you can get into a so-called conscious relationship with somebody else that wants to mature themselves, but wants to grow themselves up, well, then if you can just find a paradigm to use, because there's a number of different paradigms. Like I said, we're in the Jungian one, but you can just use that as your curriculum, and you can start doing this work, and you can just really advance yourself tremendously if you have both people dedicated to it. And then, like what I was talking to Rebecca about outside there, is that if you have a small eco village or intentional community, if you can have a shared paradigm, shared language, shared shadow work practices, understandings of why we trigger each other, how we trigger each other, what's the stuff in the shadow that's below the triggering, conflict resolution, and just sort of having a shared understanding of what this is all happening, because it's all in the invisible world of the psyche. So you need models and language to understand what's happening, how are these conflicts being created. Then you have now a very, very advanced container there for advancing a number of people at once. And then the last thing I'll say is, once you go into this domain seriously and you start investigating the shadow side of your own psyche and of other people, you recognize that all that evil that you were concentrating on in the outside world, the Bill Gates and the, and the wars and all that stuff, is a projection of our own internal shadow material. And we're all collectively projecting and displacing our own grief, our own rage, our own sexuality out into the world. And this is what it looks like when you have a world of unconscious people dumping their own shadow garbage into the world and onto each other.
Yeah.
So there's nothing you can really do in the world to clean it up or whatever if you're not cleaning up yourself and your relationships.
I love it.
So that's the spiel there.
It's a good spiel.
Okay,
it's a good spiel. Yeah, and it's challenging work to do. A lot of people avoid it. Even if you have the frameworks in place, it's still going to spring up. And what I've come to lately, because we are like, I'd like to think we're at the tail end of a season of great adversity in our household, in our community, on our business and everything. But Napoleon Hill says, within every adversity lies the seed of an equal or greater benefit.
That's right.
And then a framework that I've been tapping into lately is Christianity and the teachings of Jesus Christ, especially. And I know a lot of people throw Paul under the bus, and there's some conspiracy there as well to uncover. But the whole rejoice in your sufferings thing has really spoke volumes to me. It's like suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, character produces hope. Right? It's because if you're tuned to growth and shadow work and you're more conscious in life, when the suffering springs up, you're like, why did I manifest this? What role did I play in attracting this?
That's right.
Why is this pissing me off so much? And what is there to uncover? And you're kind of like grateful. And I say that cautiously because I don't want to attract more suffering because the suffering's hard, but we're on a journey. And it's also like back to the Christian framework. I think I'm put on this planet, we all are, to do God's work, to do good work, however you want to frame it. And it's God preparing us for what's coming next, because what's coming next is going to be way bigger and way more impactful. And let's segue to that, use that as a segue to Health Reveal, right? So like, what is this project all about? Mr. Scott, do you want to share and kind of explain what it is? Healthrevealed.org is the website, healthrevealed.org.
Yeah, so we have Leslie Powers is actually in the system as a social worker.
Okay.
And Stephanie Mo Davis, who's been in the system as a patient, having some organ transplants, and it kept her in the system for a very long time. So, and then Corey and I are kind of the outsiders, the freedom, from the freedom community, and I'm specializing in the inner work. And so we overlap a lot. And we've just been an incredible team for giving perspective. And now we've added Colin, so we're going to have a fifth member here. And it gives perspective. Even Colin and I come from very different inner work backgrounds. But
Tell
rather,
them about your background.
yeah, I have a background in the Dianetics and Scientology cult. I was in there for a long time.
Okay.
And one of the things when I got really red-pilled in it, which I've for a long time been, but when I really got it with connecting with Mark Passio, I started to realize that I was living in a cult outside of the cult, and that I had never, I hadn't truly broken free, and that a very effective inner work paradigm was in the left in I'm looking for the word sequestered in a cult that was unreachable for the common man. I mean, you can go out and buy a book, Dianetics, and I recommend that you do, because people used to use that for self-help and just getting together at home. But there's a lot of techniques in there that are sequestered, and you can't get them unless you mortgage your life savings, mortgage your house and go through the whole process. But you can if you know what you're doing. And I'm sort of bringing that out and learning other paradigms, because you see the divide in psychiatry, psychology versus Scientology is huge, right? And each has pieces of the puzzle. And Colin has uncovered what I think is a breakthrough pioneering work, how to apply this stuff to yourself at home. And I'm all for getting people together and teaching them how to do this, in a simple way where you don't have to spend all the money. And as well, making this connect to the outer work, the great work, the community, building of community. And I was thinking as we were coming over, communities inevitably run into these personal issues. And it's a tragedy, because we all come together with a common purpose and we all have great visions and ideas. And then all of a sudden somebody's in conflict, over some personal issue. And it's a tragedy that we don't
it's some
have.
small meaninless
It's
thing,
a small
That's
small
just
thing.
the trigger, right?
That's a trigger. So it's if we're going to make these communities sustainable, they have to be sustainable not only by the design, but also sustainable by the fact that people can connect with each other successfully and keep that motion going,
Resolve
and not
their
stumble
conflicts, right.
on these petty conflicts that can arise with people who haven't done or don't understand the inner work and the psychology that we're dealing with.
I mean, yeah. So our community completely fell apart, and it was exactly because of that. And there was a new family that we invited in, and there was some conflict and tension there. But then there was even a fracturing of somebody who I considered my best friend, and that was an intimate part of this business that we have, Live Free Academy. And it just kind of came out of left field, but the writing was on the wall. But it's just, that came to mind because it's like, we are relatively conscious people,
right?
And we're doing inner work, and it still was like, it just completely crashed. So you really have to set the time aside and dedicate continual practice to this. And one of the key pieces is like, you just got to get your ego out of the way. That's what I've found. And as I've dove deeper into self-development, and then the Christian, or at least the relationship with Jesus Christ side has really helped to advance that. I've started to get a little frustrated when I can see that there's clearly some bullshit being spoken, or their ego is obviously preventing them from just being like, you know what, you're right. The way that I showed up just a minute ago or whatever. And I'm just kind of starting to get frustrated with it. But then at the same time, I still do it too,
Right,
So.
Exactly. So we bring people into our lives to mirror our own repressed stuff, our own unconscious stuff, so that they're convenient projector screens for us to see ourselves in if we know how to look at it.
Especially kids.
Oh, absolutely. Perfect. But so let me ask you, what if there had been a third party when you had this blow up with your partner there, and what if that third party had come in and said, okay, well, John, here's how this might be working, and blah, blah, blah. And then you were like, okay, I can see that and stuff, because you're advanced enough to be able to gel with that. And then we had gone to the other person that you're in a conflict with and tried to kind of give them a paradigm of understanding how they were contributing to the
Mhm.
conflict and what their side of it was,
Mhm.
would that person have been able, would they would have stood up and said, I'm out of here? Or would they have been able to say, okay, no, maybe you're right. If a third party had been able to come in there, do you think it could have been resolved?
It would have made a world of difference.
Yeah.
And it also is like, in the challenge is like, some of the medicine for Beck and I is that we're overly ambitious, or at least it's okay to have the ambition, but then we take on too much
Yeah.
and we do
Oh, yeah.
multiple things
Get
not
too
as
thin.
well, or things just crash, or
Yes.
we overcommit
Yes.
and there's false expectations, people get resentful or whatever.
Right.
Because we know that when you have a community or a business, you should put in place ahead of time, anticipating conflict, a
Yeah.
framework
Yeah.
for resolving conflict.
Right.
And then when the conflict arises, you go
Right.
back to the framework.
Right.
But part of the medicine that we've got through all of it is like, we need to slow down.
Yes.
We can't do it all at the
Right.
same time. And because we're neglecting the community, or at least putting the attention to the community to help work through this. It got to a point where I like consciously was like, there's conflict going on inside my home with
Yes.
my family.
Yes.
And I barely have enough capacity
That's
or
right.
CPU
Right.
to deal with that. So this
Right.
other conflict, like
Yes.
with someone that's not like part of my inner tribe,
Yeah.
I don't even have the time or capacity
Yeah.
for it.
No.
And so I think like a lot of people rush into community, maybe like you said, they're rushing in because they need to fix something.
Mhm.
But you got to make sure that if you're going to do community or entrepreneurship or some activist organization, you also have the time, attention, and heart energy reserved to do the work, because it's coming, it's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
And I just didn't have the time or attention. I had no desire. I was like,
Yeah.
I can't even bother with that. I got to focus
Right.
on this. Our business, we got to do this
Right.
and that. And it's like, I was okay, willing to let it go. But, you never fail until you give up. So it's all just lessons and well wishes to everybody that was involved. But yeah. This is serious work.
You just explained just the situation perfectly, and your realizations about it, and how you're spreading yourself too thin, and then how you don't have the energy to be able to get to the core of issues when they arise, and how that it's probably better to stay focused and smaller, and so that you can actually have the heart-based empathy and attention to be able to give to, you're basically the daddy of the community at your level. And so you have to be a good father for everybody. And do you have time and energy to do that? Right.
And I didn't. And that's something too, is like the weight of the shoulders being at the center of all these various little things. It's a total pain in the ass. Okay. Well, let's get back to this project here. So
Yes.
What is it that you guys are actually doing, right? So we see a website. I imagine there's educational initiative, but like what is it that you guys are doing? What are y'all giving to the world through Health Revealed?
Well, we have literally hundreds of slides of information, bringing anything that has to do with the government, democide, which is, for those who don't know, death by government.
Mm-hmm.
And
seminar, cool, for free right here.
And like a lot of the experiments that people have seen on YouTube videos, like the old Stanford experiments, how evil a person can be when they're following orders, right? So we wanted to bring this knowledge to the medical community. We've just been through a medical tyranny, and we're sort of still under it, right? I mean, for those who are in the matrix, it's a medical tyranny.
Yeah, right.
And we're trying to de-tyrannize things, whether that means healthcare practitioners kind of wake up and go alternative, that's fine. Whether some insiders start reforming the system, which is a long shot, but we're always ready for miracles, right?
There's some stuff happening with this whole Maha thing.
Time.
That too.
Big time.
That's a
huge
big help.
boost to this whole movement. Yes.
And bringing people together, and one of the action steps you guys can take is connect with us. We have a website, and if you have services to offer, you can get on our map. We have an interactive map.
Oh wow.
We'd like to interview more people. As soon as we're done, we're kind of wrapping up. We have literally over 12 hours of video of us together talking about our slides and giving perspective. So it's kind of an unlimited watch. It's a lot of material.
It's a big mission.
Yeah, it's a big mission, and we're just trying to get people on the same page, and reforming the healthcare system, the outer system, but more importantly, transforming their inner health, because the inner work is directly related to your health, right? It's like you got to do the inner work and the shadow work in order to, because you're going to manifest it in your body if you don't. See, that's the sad fact. So it's going to manifest in breakdowns in personal relations outside of you. It's going to manifest in your body when you don't address the trauma that you're carrying with you and that gets triggered. Sometimes, you go through life and you don't even know you have these deep traumas until it gets triggered by something you don't know what.
Yeah.
And you're going along, you're 30 some years old, and all of a sudden, big crisis, maybe a big health crisis, and you may be eating right and all those things. And that's very important. It all interacts. So we're more on the side of the mental and spiritual components of health. Okay. And bringing the health practitioner community up in awareness and bringing individuals up into awareness of their, what role do they play in their health, which should be a key one. It shouldn't be a passive, I just go to the doctor when I need to. It should be people educating themselves about their health and educating themselves about inner work, empowering themselves, right?
Yeah.
So that we can be a strong movement, a strong community.
There's a tendency to, when the pain arises from the triggering, a lot of folks, especially in the West, and I struggle with this myself, there's a tendency to numb it and avoid it instead of face it.
Exactly.
And so that's the whole rejoicing
and
suffering
addiction
thing.
from it.
That's right. It's
And
just a total avoidance.
scrolling.
And you just got to lean in. Yep. The distraction, the scrolling. Mine's work.
Yeah.
Workaholism.
Workaholism.
And they're all destructive in their own ways.
Absolutely,
but you just got to face it sometimes. Face the pain. Get comfortable with the uncomfortable. All right, you got a book here. What do you got?
Well, no, you know what we
share about it. We'd love to
okay.
hear about it.
I was going to show you this one element in the book that it interfaces with what you guys are saying, but let's just say, okay, so this
Give us the elevator pitch for it.
The elevator. Okay, anyone can go to shadowtechalchemy.com and you can get this book there, and or you can go to my site, which is colindavis.com. This is okay. So a little bit of background. Melissa Mari, my wife, she's now passed now, which unfortunately,
sorry to hear that.
Yes. But we developed all this work together over the last basically 12 to 15 years. And so we wrote a book in 2015 called Shadow Tech, and you can go to books and that was our first book. And if you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see it. And it's sort of a holistic look at evil, at what these guys were describing with their seminar and everything, with democide and statism and collective evil and what we might call the deep state and all of that. And so this was sort of a holistic, and I was using so integral theory and other holistic models to try to basically tie together the Jungian understanding of the shadow of the psyche with other understandings, all these red-pilled understandings, and sort of bring it together into a formulation. So that was the first attempt to do that, and I felt like we got our point, but it was still too kind of pieced together or whatever. So this I put together in 2024, and this was, I said to myself, I need to be able to take all of this information and all of the lessons that we've learned of, using our relationship as a vessel for evolution, and put it into a very short book and summarize everything very concisely. So I did that at the beginning of 2024, and that's what this is. So I recommend this book to people over Shadow Tech because it kind of gets to the point of the main point is there is a deep state in here which correlates to the deep state out there. The deep state out there is a manifestation of the repressed shadow within all of us. And in fact, what we call evil could be, in the Jungian understanding of the shadow, which is everything we can't take, our egos can't stand to face about ourselves. Our sexuality, our violence, our rage, our grief, our guilt, our shame, all that kind of stuff. We repress it down, and then it finds its way into the world one way or the other through unconscious behavior or getting into groups which do things very unconsciously. And so you could say that the evil is the external social equivalent to what Jung called the shadow inside here. And so this kind of ties that together and then gives you shadow work practices in a number of domains. And what I was going to show you, John, is that, I don't know if you know Ken Wilber in integral theory. It's sort of a it's like a holistic model that brings together a lot of models of psychology, of spirituality, of sociology, and brings them all into one framework. And sort of, we can talk about it later. It's very helpful. But Ken has something called the 4-quadrant model. And basically he recognizes that, how can you take any subject and then look at all the people that are writing about that subject, about war, or about, alternative communities or whatever. There's always going to be 4 main perspectives that we address any subject from. There's going to be the perspective of me internally, my subjective internal experience. There's going to be the perspective of my actual physical behavior and how I act in the world and how my body is behaving. Then there's going to be the collective social culture, we call it, which is our shared understanding. And this is where people are going to create philosophies and all kinds of isms and Marxism and communism and capitalism. And then we can sort of share understandings through culture. And then there's the physical way we build the world. How do we actually construct our world? Are we in a modern industrial society? Do we have a hierarchical, educational system? Or is it more like this or that? 4 kind of main ways in which people address all the same problems from different directions. Okay. So I basically took the subject of evil and the shadow, and I put that into the 4-quadrant model. And I said, so what is this paradigm from all 4 of these quadrants? And so basically in the internal mind level, that's what Jung called the shadow. It's your repressed stuff in your unconscious. Okay. And then what we call cultural evil, that's all the destructive ideologies. This evil or shadow also manifests in the body as disease. And then it manifests in the society as what I call the collective deep state. That's like, wage slavery and the taxation and all that kind of stuff. How that it actually forms the basis of how we actually live together in society. So then I've given you shadow work practices in all 4 of those domains, how to clean up, how to make these domains transparent, how to bring the unconscious into the conscious with exercises in all of these domains and stuff. So I'm actually not just talking about the problem, but I'm saying you need work to do, you need practices, and here you go. Cool. And so that's what that is. And people can get it, shadowtechalchemy.com.
Yeah, and you can actually, if you to get the book for free, I think all you have to do is sign up for my mailing list. But why don't I take you to my website, colindavis.com, because I think I need to now make it very clear on the front of Shadow Tech Alchemy how to download the book. But colindavis.com, that's my counseling site. Sweet. And if you go to the work, go to see, look at me.
You're making it not very easy on us here.
Scroll down. You can download a copy of Transforming Darkness.
Sweet.
Here.
All right, I'll share that there in the chat.
Yep. Okay, good stuff.
Yeah, so there we go.
All right, great. Well, man, I'd love to go on and on. I especially love having these in studio things here, but I got a hard thing coming up at noon.
Right.
One thing this work does for folks is I've known a lot of people fall into this victimhood mode.
Oh yeah.
Especially if they had, we've all had trauma in our childhood, but especially if there's been extreme trauma. It's like, I grew up this way and that way, therefore I can't do this, or that's beyond me. And it's it's coming from a place of weakness, but we all have the power within us. And when we can tap into this mindset and leverage these frameworks and do this work, we become empowered.
Yes.
We become to realize that we are in control. And I think there's a lot of disempowerment through this system that is pervasive in society, and this work really helps to empower people quite a bit.
Those are layers. There's layers of grief and stuff that are down there before they can actually get to feeling empowered. and they've been disempowered by parents and stuff, and disenfranchised by their family. And so they have these layers of anger and grief and disempowerment and stuff that have to be processed and basically integrated before they can start feeling themselves, and feeling, okay, this is my power. And then sometimes when you're in that situation, you start to touch your genius, you start to touch your power. And then you get maybe very inflated very quickly, very grandiose, and I can do anything. And wow, I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a Superman. And then you start trying to fly around and show everybody how much of a Superman or Superwoman you are. And you're like Icarus, you go close to the sun very easily, and then you crash and burn.
The pendulum swings
and
back.
then you're like, oh no, I am a loser, just like my dad said, and blah, blah, blah. And they have to process all that junk
It's
again
a
and
never-ending
stuff like
cycle.
that. But at least if you have tools, if you have a framework for doing that, you're like, okay, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
This is what happened to me. This is why my psychology is the way it is. And this is what I'm going to have to cope with. And here's the exercises I'm going to do. And especially if you could find a third-party therapist, counselor that's especially red-pilled or something would be nice.
ColinDavis.com.
Me and we were talking about
And the
that.
map, healthreveal.org. Check out the map. For
Exactly.
The kind of work.
We're going to, over time, start bringing in more people who are licensed therapists, who are not inside necessarily academia and blue-pilled people, but actually red-pilled people who are licensed therapists, and people who are, whether they're Jungian or they're using the internal family systems model or whatever model they're using, that can interface with people that need outside assistance, but who are in our movement.
I want to make a pitch for you guys to consider doing this same work, but in the private realm. And this came up because you said licensed. I know, insurance and stuff. There's a role for that, but there's this whole model where you create a non-statutory trust,
right?
And that stewards the resources, maybe rents the office.
Right.
That's where the money is held,
right?
And then
PMA.
you have a PMA,
Yep.
And then you have a 508c1a, spiritual in essence. Some people try to wedge what they're doing into the 508c1a. This is obviously 508c1a,
Right. This is
spiritual activity. So something to consider. And a lot of people are attracted to that. It could take on some extra
I agree with you.
oomph if
we were
it was
talking to
like that.
Rebecca about that. Or absolutely.
I'm signed up.
Sweet.
I recently signed up for that, so that's where I'm taking it. That's the track I'm on.
Yeah, and if folks want to learn more about that, if you want to check it out, we have a free webinar, livefree.academy.
Okay,
/Trinity, livefree.academy/Trinity. Okay, before we let you go, and we got to wrap in 3 minutes, let's go down the line, and I'm going to each of us share one simple thing that anyone watching now or watching the replay can do in order to further this work. Just one simple tip, tactic, something easy they could do right after the program ends. And the one that I'm going to share that's helped for me is to be very gentle and forgiving with yourself. Like you were saying, when you go into Superman mode and then inevitably something happens, you crash and you go back down. Oh, that's exactly what you shouldn't have even tried or whatever. Yeah. Just be patient, be forgiving, love yourself. Yeah. And the worst thing you could do is get caught in this rut of self-sabotage and your self-hating and all this stuff. Just, okay, I screwed up again. It's not in alignment with the person that I want to be, but I'm growing and I'm on a path, and I'm going to forgive myself and forgive my inner child too for all that stuff, and forgive any aggressor or whatever. So that would be mine. What do you got, Scott?
My best advice would be get a journal. And this is kind of lost in modern society. Some people use their electronic devices for journaling. That's okay. It's preferable to get something that you can write out maybe at your bedside before going to bed. But this journal is something you can use for your inner work. And it's very therapeutic to write out when you're going through adversity, what you're going through. Even if it's to yourself. If you've got a trusted mate or something that you want to share with, that's fine too. That all the better. But I would say that's the basic tool for self-inner work. If you can't find a therapist immediately, or you don't really trust, or you have any of those kind of trust issues, you can start working with yourself. Get a hold of Colin's book. I have some websites, freescientology.us. And from that central website, you can click on a lot of links that'll give you very helpful, immediate actions you can do. They're very simple that you can journal if you want to do it by yourself. So it's freescientology.us.
Good stuff. Yeah. Okay. What about you, Mr. Colin?
I would say I agree with Scott completely. Keep a journal, keep a dream journal and a journal. And I would take what you said, John, and I would say, okay, so you're in one of those moments. I'm going to give you an emotional processing technique. That's what it's called. You're in one of those moments. You've crashed. You've been triggered. You had a fight. You know, you're sitting on the other couch. She's over there, or whatever it is, or you walked out of there, or whatever, or maybe, you know, got into a fight with your boss and you're driving away or whatever. Pull under a tree. Pull in with a car, pull under a nice tree or whatever, kick the seat back or whatever, and allow the emotions that you're feeling right now to come up completely. Instead of driving like a maniac, right? Or screaming at somebody, road rage, whatever it is.
Going to the bar.
Or going to the bar, exactly. Or even maybe something healthy, like going for a run or whatever, which you think, well, this is healthy. It's still a displacement mechanism, and it's a way of getting this emotional energy out through another outlet, but it needs to come up through your emotional system. So allow yourself to sit down and allow yourself to be alone, and allow, if it's anger, it'll come up right on top and you'll want to punch something, right? But you don't let yourself punch something, and you just breathe and just allow the anger to come up. Often what will happen is underneath the anger, then there will be grief. And you'll want to cry, and then allow yourself to cry, and allow all the crying to come out. And you're in your car or you're in your room or whatever it is, you're alone right now. If you know that the incident happened a little while ago and now you're alone. And so you can just breathe through it and allow all the energy to come up, and just tell yourself, I'd like to have all of this energy come up right now. Let the rage come up, let the grief come up, let the sobbing happen, and just go through the process, and just sit in the car wherever you're at for 15, 20 minutes or however long it takes you, and just cry through it, or just breathe through it, and allow all that energy to come up and move through your physiological system. Then we can talk about why the conflict started and what the sort of pain body is, as Eckhart Tolle calls it, that's between you and your boss or whoever, your wife, whatever you're fighting with. But this is just an emotional processing technique to move the energy. And sometimes in the early days of doing this process, you'll actually have little micro spiritual awakenings. You might feel your consciousness kind of raise above your head or something like that. Or you'll have dreams that night that are very important and stuff like that. So it's basically an allowance of all the emotions that's behind the trigger to move through you, and especially with the crying. And a lot of men can't cry, but women too. Allow yourself to start crying and sobbing, you could say, and moving that energy out. And the more you do that and just bring that into your life, that a lot of that shadow junk that you've been using, video games or addictions or fights or whatever, to move, now can come out through this other outlet, and you'll start reducing that store of basically it's a store of old trauma symptoms and stuff, and you'll start reducing that slowly.